Hi guys. Today I'm going to take you through two different styles of magazine. So the first style I'm going to show you is the traditional magazine that is used to make money and sell advertising. And so I'm going to show you a little bit of British GQ. Um, it probably, GQ magazine in in England probably has, a staff of 50 to 60 people working on it. It relies on selling advertising to fashion houses, to watches, to lifestyle companies, because that's really what GQ magazine is selling. So you can sort of see this is the first style. These types of magazines are becoming less and less successful because um, it's an older sort of traditional way to um, to sell magazines, and magazines in general are less popular than they used to be sort of 15 years ago. However, there still are lots of different publications that use the advertising model. The second model I'm going to show you is for organizations that want to sort of inform their general sort of shareholders or organization. So I'll show you a UBC magazine, the Faculty of Medicine magazine, that basically doesn't ask for advertising, but uses part of their marketing budget to send out to every faculty of medicine or member in British Columbia, which is quite large, and is used to sort of update them, tell them interesting things going on with their researchers and doctors, and breakthroughs and all sorts of things like that. So this is GQ magazine. Again, you can sort of see up at the top their traditional masthead. Some really kind of messy cut lines here. You can see the main story is about James Corden. Not the greatest type in the world, but you see how they really sort of pack in all the different things, like, it's the innovation special, Bluetooth sunglasses. And it's like, yay. So all sorts of little ads for things you're going to see in the magazine. And then let's just flip through it a little bit. So in a lot of magazines like this, you pay a lot of money to have your ads before the table of contents. So they might sell sort of 10 to 15 pages, depending on the magazine. But you can sort of see, like, these organizations and companies are paying to have double page, full page images. And then there we go. We finally get to the table of contents. So the big difference in the two styles of magazines I'm going to show you is one is meant to get people to pick up the magazine on the newsstand. So there still is a huge magazine store interest across North America, in Europe, and that sort of thing. So you can go into a magazine store, sort of skim all the magazines, and if you like James Corden, then perhaps you would pick up this magazine and then flip through it. And so what they're trying to do in a very quick way is they're trying to sell you on buying this sort of $7 to $10 magazine. So they want to pack it full of information that you might be interested in, right? So the two different styles of design are, when you are selling a magazine like this, you are trying to put in enough things that people go, oh yeah, I really wanted to see, I'm really interested in that. And look, there's a thing on boots, and there's all sorts of things. So you're basically doing these little advertisements even in your table of contents, so people can flip it open and go, yeah, you know what? That looks like it has a lot of interesting things in it. And so it's very visual, and it's a little bit over the top, and it's a real balancing act trying to do a table of contents like this. And then you can see they launch into more ads, and then a secondary contents page that is just featuring the James Corden story itself. So a lot of times these magazines will be 120 pages, you know, depending on, it's always, the content is always based on how much advertising they sell. So if they, in before you sell the ads way before the issue comes out, so if they say, hey, we've just sold 30 ads before the table of contents, then that's going to tell them what kind of budget they're working for and how big the magazine is going to be for that issue. So again, here's a secondary table of contents, features and fashion, right? So these would be things that will, when you design a magazine, it has certain sections that are the same every issue, and then it has features, right? So these are, this is just a list of all the people that work at the magazine. You'll see that in most magazines as well. Um, and then they traditionally start with a letter from the editor. So you can start seeing, okay, I see a little bit of what's going on with the magazine. So they're working with a, you know, in this section, they're working with a 3-column grid. They're sort of overlapping type over top of the masthead, which is a little bit dated, but it's okay. And then they'll flip, right? So these are letters to the editor after the editor's letter. So you can sort of see a little bit of how the 3-column grid goes from top to bottom, and they're making sure that they don't do too much in this magazine that doesn't have images. Here's some contributors. So you can see there are lots and lots of different sections, right? So the GQ forward, oh, it's still a mad world out there, right? So they would have actually hired, if you can see, story by George Chesterton, illustration by Tom Hagamat. So they would have hired Tom to do this. That illustration would typically, in GQ, probably about $500 to $600. That illustrator got paid for that. And then the GQ forward, so you see that they continue with their 3-column grid. They're using drop cats. You can see the first sort of pull quote. It's in there because this is a whole lot of text, right? So this is what we're kind of talking about, how you break up big chunks of text. Well, in this case, they're using drop caps, and they're using sort of bulky pull quotes. So you can just, as we go through it, a section on television, right? So each issue, they'll have writers that are dedicated to writing certain sections. So details travel. So if you start looking now, details television, you see how it has a rule and it has a introduction, and then you go to details travel. These are starting to be sections. These are a little bit more heavy on the editorial side. So they're really talking about sort of one subject. But if, oh, let's just go back there. Details entrepreneur. So secrets of the hyper-productive, right? So these are all things within a theme that basically follows a timeline, and these are some cool things you can get, all right? Lots of images on this one, but you can start seeing details on watches, right? Oh, what's the deal with watches? And so you can see there's a little story. There's an image that probably an in-house photographer would shoot that. But you see the way, if you look up at the top, details architecture, right? So you can start seeing how departments in this particular magazine are done, right? With the heading up at the top and a rule. Details culture, right? So now they're going to longer, these are still they're still departments, but these are much longer. So they switched to a 4-column grid here, but are still using the same margins, same hanglines, same place where everything falls on the magazine itself, right? And then flipping back to 3 columns in that same, using the same grid. Barbara's got your back. So this, I believe, is a partnership that they, so this is kind of a story that they've done with a design house, I believe. So sometimes you will have that. So details style. So let's just flip through this. Details grooming, details futurism. Your new earphones and shade tech, right? Media. So these are all departments that each issue, it's very easy to follow. It does take a long time to lay these things out nicely, but you're basically working with every issue, you're using the same magazine template over and then just mixing up what the content looks like. So let's continue through until we hit. So here's a partnership. So so it says, if you look up at the top, it says GQ partnership. Basically what that is saying is they're doing a story on this really cool tourism destination. In return, they would make they would get money from the tourist place. So trends. So you can see a lot of these things are very visual, especially with things like trends. So um, here's one called Hype, the 10 objects that define summer right now. Let's just click through until we get a feature. So you can see lots of very visual, yeah, lots of type, but not, once you get in here, these images are really meant to sort of catch your eyes and read about them. So, man essentials. Okay, let's find ourselves a feature. Okay. GQ cars. Okay, this would be kind of their first feature, but it's not really a feature. It still is a paid. They would be going to like Ferrari and places like that and say, we're writing this story. Can you supply it? Would you like to be in it? This is how much it'll cost. So once you sort of flip through, you can see how big they are. Just gonna see if they have a standalone feature. So here's something called Sport, where it's like a definitive kind of feature story, but it's all still part of sport. Then they have one about film and television and technology, music. Aha. So finally, after about 50 to 60 pages, we get to our first feature. Now, when you're working on a feature in this style of magazine, it better not look like a department, right? So this would be probably the senior designer at the magazine and the creative director at the magazine putting this out to some of the other designers and going, everybody is going to work on a spread for James Corden. So they'll sketch it out, they'll submit it, then the creative director goes, yeah, I love the idea of like James Corden sort of holding up a glass and like a goldfish coming out, and just like how sort of fun and irreverent he is. And then whoever did that kind of sketch would then be responsible for designing this actual feature. So the creative director would go, okay, I think I know the perfect photographer for this. So we're gonna hire Simone, and probably Simone would make about $1,000 for this shot. And then the art director that came up with the idea would then basically lay out the entire feature. So typically the editorial team would go, you've got 10 pages to work with, or 8 pages. So in this case, they've gone 2 pages, 4 pages, 6 pages, 8 pages, 10 pages. Oop, slow down. 12 pages. So as you can see, they do not go very far without having images in it. So this is the first type of magazine. super fun to work on these types of magazines. There still are jobs out there for magazines. Not a lot in Vancouver, unfortunately. Okay, before we move on, let's just flip through to the feature on here. Oh no, I'm gonna have to flip through every freaking page. Seriously. Let's see if it's up here somewhere. Here, uh, here, here. This has got to be it. No, here. Ah, here we go. So, just for shits and giggles, let's just have a good look, you guys, at the layout of this feature spread, right? So it's a double page spread that they've given the designer to work with. Because it's a feature, the type in it does not have to um, it does not have to follow like a department. In a department, you'll have a lot more sort of rules that you have to follow, but in a feature, you sort of have a little bit more leeway. The typefaces may the headline you might be able to get away depending on the magazine. They might say, yeah, you can use whatever typeface you think goes with it, but then the body copy and pull quotes and everything will sort of follow the magazine. So if you have a look here, the magazine itself has a lot of the things that we're talking about, right? So there's a little tag to sort of show you where you're at in the magazine, your headline. Here's the intro copy. This is the bylines of who wrote the story, and then they simply give a little bit of a quote from James Corden here. Then as we go through it, I want you to pay attention to some of the things that we've talked about, right? So the pacing, right? It's a three column magazine, and typically the text is always going to start up at the top unless you have an image or something else. So here they've started with an introduction to the story itself. I don't love how little room there is underneath the intro. And then they use a drop cap to begin the story. Typically, I do not love starting a story with a big intro copy and then using a drop cap in the first paragraph, only because drop caps are really there to get your attention, to let you know that this is where the story starts. So to me, it's always like, okay, if you do one, then maybe you don't do the other. However, let's just follow along. So we have our folios down here. They go to a series of images, and now I just want you to look, for pacing's sake, color photograph versus black and white. So they establish early on in this story that there is going to be black and white photography. That way it doesn't just show up out of left field. Then as we go through, they've moved to a huge picture, then way less copy here. They're still using these tags to let you know, yeah, hey, in case you were flipping around, this is still the James Corden story. Then as we get to this spread, they go, okay, so we have a lot of copy we have to get through in this magazine. So what about if we go to a system just for this story where we do 3 full columns of type? We'll use drop caps, and we'll use an image that drops right in the middle of the page with a nice little caption, some nice space around the image, and then on the right side we'll use like full color photography. So then as we go through here, the reader starts to understand, yeah, that's how this magazine is going to go. Right, that's how this feature is going to work. So here you can see the last page. Again, I don't love having the images over here on the last page, but it's fine. Over here, you'll see they have a little GQ tag that they put to show the reader that this is the end of the story. And then these are some things that you will have found in the magazine that he was wearing and that you can buy. And then finally, the last tag, so people know that this is actually still part of the story. So you can start seeing some ways that the magazine has character and how you understand how the systems work, right? So we just move into these sort of portraits of people, right? So fashion mentors, right? And then as we go through here, they would have hired photographers to go out and shoot these people. And it's pretty much set up the same for the most part on every spread, right? So, and then there's one on, it looks like on the violence in France. So as you go through here, again, so here, for interest's sake, they have obviously two sizes of drop caps that they can use. They have a few sizes of pull quotes they use. They tend to use this little tag up at the top to let you know what story you're on. So you'll see that it works pretty well. And then it's all about really sort of breaking up the space. So here we go, 3 drop caps, a couple pull quotes in the same place, and a lot of text, right? And then we go to the last page. So they tend to like to finish their articles with images on the right, and then again the story stops there. So as you flip through these magazines, you're going to have to choose a department from a magazine that you're going to use in your magazine, and you can sort of see by flipping through these magazines how it works with features. So it's obviously always on the same grid, it's always the same typeface, there's always indicators along the top that tell you what the department is or what the feature is about. And yeah, that's a way that the magazine stays sort of easy to understand, easy to figure out where you are. Yeah, and then as you go through it, you'll see that there's always something going on, whether it's huge photographs, or once they get into the stories themselves, how it lays out. So that's the first type of magazine we're looking at. One kind of design publication we're going to look at are publications and magazines that get done for organizations, and they get sent out to their membership. This was the original sort of UBC magazine that we designed. So with these types of things, the budgets are 10 times less, obviously, than something like GQ. There's no advertising in it. So there would be a publication, a magazine team, and then Signals would do the design. So we really weren't part of like the team that would say what are the stories going to be, what are the sections going to be. But what we would give them is, originally I would have designed the magazine, basically giving them a template so that they understand how many words to write for a story, how many features there's going to be, all of those things, and they fill that in, and then they share it with us, and we have a meeting, and we sit down, and they go, this is what this story is about, and we go over it, and it's hours and hours and hours, and then they say, so on the cover we want to feature interprofessional education, and we go, okay, well maybe that's something that we'll look at, just doing like a really simple collage after we talk about what it's about and everything. So on this cover, this is just a simple collage using stock imagery, stock images from probably iStock, probably all in this thing. The cover design would have cost them about $200 to $300 to use these images, and then a bunch of my time to collage these things together. So way less sexy, way less sort of interesting, but still fun publications to work on. So again, you'll see a little bit like GQ, but everything is a little bit more understated, right? So a lot of these stories are actually about researchers that are doing great things at UBC, doctors and that sort of thing. So again, just a little bit scaled down. So here's the message, not from the editor, but from the Dean of the Faculty of Medicine. So we would have hired a photographer to go out and shoot him, and then this would be used this would be used on every version of the magazine. And then as we go out, oh, there's the cover story right away. And then they wanted us to create a timeline on the 60th anniversary of the Faculty of Medicine. So yeah, these would have been supplied images and then some stock images that we peppered in to keep the thing interesting. So we, from a standpoint when we were looking at all the great timelines of UBC medicine, we tried to work in some actual dates for mankind and how it fell in there as well, which hopefully made it a little bit more interesting. So as you go through it, you start seeing every time we would hire the same photographer, he would go out and shoot people that are, doing research. Same sort of thing at the top of the page. You can see the little tags that tell you what the story is about and that sort of thing. So here's taking it to the net, and so we would have searched countless of hours trying to find this sort of funky photograph of this house, and then we would have photoshopped things like the guy in the office just to make it look like you can work from home even back then. So then you can sort of see learning about Aboriginal health. Oh, we're going to send Beverly out to shoot these images of masks. So you sort of see this would be more of a department, so sort of investigations and breakthroughs. So it's a combination of stock images and spot illustrations. Um, this would be this would be a research feature, so averting a nuclear medicine meltdown. So you sort of see the decisions I have to make on these things are, do you want to have the two researchers as the star, or do you want to talk about more about what a nuclear medicine meltdown would look like? So this would be a stock image that I found, paid for, probably cost them a couple $100, but it looks a little bit grainy, so it doesn't look like a beautiful stock image. So those are the types of decisions you have to make. How do you turn a grid full of bad photographs into something interesting? So you layer a photograph in behind it. So all of these things go into sort of putting these, making decisions on how to make this thing balance between bad-looking researchers and doctors and turning into something that people will be interested in. So that was I think that ran about 5 years. Then they came back and hired us to redesign it again. So let's just go back to the beginning. So you sort of see, I'll just flip to the very, very, very beginning. Come on. So when I went to redesign it a second time, we went for a little bit bolder, but bolder look. So you can sort of see, again, the things that we're talking about in our project. Here's the masthead. This was the feature story, so it was about the brand new brain health building at UBC. Here's some cut lines of other stories. Here's the feature story. So it's sort of set up so you see the big image, and then it tells you, oh, you're going to see this story about the new brain center, and then UBC medicine. So all of these are descriptors. Here's the versioning. So volume 10, number 1, spring 2014. And then as you quickly go through it, you see this one is works on a different grid, uses more like black headlines, so really a little bit more stripped down than we originally did it, years before that. And you sort of see, and then here's the story on the cover story, and then just sort of how the magazine itself works out. So they would have asked me to take this image that they have and put it in there, and I'd be like, okay, what am I supposed to do with this? It's really a sexy image if you're a researcher researching ALS. So I would take that and go, okay, I'm going to close crop that and drop it in the actual layout. So same thing, right? So they send a photographer to go shoot one guy in a gymnasium about a story on wheelchairs and how to make them easier to use. So then you have to make the decision, what am I supposed to do with all of these shots that look exactly the same? So in this case, it would be, well, let's make a grid out of it and just sort of focus in on different elements of the actual wheelchair, turn it to black and white, but then have the guy that invented it in color. So a lot of things like that. So over here you can see we've gone to drop caps that work outside of the columns.